turn it on.
That's good enough for government work, I
All
think.
right.
You need to wear your shirt next time.
Yeah. Well, I call this sermon Lessons We Can Use, because the whole story provides us with a wide variety of messages and lessons that we can use in our daily life. We start off with this woman who is dead set on what she wants, and she is not going to give up until she gets it. She was pushy. She was aggressive. She was assertive. And she would not be denied. Even when the Lord just seemed to ignore her, she wouldn't quit. You know, we could put her words in a modern day colloquy by having her tell Jesus, "Hey buddy, you're not through with me yet. Pay attention." But Jesus didn't. And you know, it's really hard to think of Jesus with somebody asking for help and pleading with him to ignore them. That's not the Jesus we know. That's not the Jesus that we follow. And here she is, she's a Canaanite woman, and she says, "Lord, have mercy on me, O Son of David. My daughter is possessed by a demon." Well, handling demons was duck soup for Jesus. He did that all the time. That wasn't anything very unusual to him. So why did he ignore her? Why didn't he pay any attention? Why didn't he do anything? This woman was in great distress. And that's who our Jesus is. Somebody who comes to us in times of great distress. But yet he doesn't even acknowledge her existence. And in the story, we don't even know if he even looked at her. He sure didn't pay any attention. What happened? Well, maybe if we examine the scene a little bit, we can figure it out. Maybe it was because of her timing. Matthew tells us that Jesus had withdrawn into the district of Tyre and Sidon. And Jesus did this from time to time, you know. He had to get away. He needed rest. He could not allow his total life to be totally consumed by others. He had to rebuild, to recharge. So he took his disciples away periodically. And in this story, he took them where the crowd probably would not be able to follow. You know, maybe he was just simply tired, like sometimes we get. And when we get tired or busy, we just don't have time for other people. And Jesus did something that maybe we can learn a lesson from. I know I could. He took care of himself. He knew that he had to get away and get some rest, that he couldn't be consumed all of the time with all of his service. You see, he took his time to go apart. We too need times apart. As someone has said, we need times apart before we come apart. And that's the lesson that Jesus knew. So here he is on this retreat, and this woman is just not going to let him alone. Maybe it was her timing, or maybe it was her attitude. Maybe he knew that she waited until it was his day off before she begged him. You know, I used to have, when I first came here, we used to have a lady in the congregation would call me on Fridays, which I try to take as a day off, but don't get to very often. And she'd always say, I know it's your day off, but. And maybe this was the same kind of a situation with this lady. Maybe she was telling Jesus, I know you're trying to get some rest, but I need some help right now. Maybe it was her timing. Maybe it was her attitude. She was certainly no shrinking violet. She was as persistent as anybody could be. You wonder if maybe her mother didn't ever tell her that nice girls don't insist on having their own way. See, it's harder for a woman in society to be assertive than it is for a man. It's considered unfeminine to be pushy, to be assertive. When a man does it, he's just being aggressive. When a woman does it, she's being pushy. And this woman was very, very pushy. Anyone, even Jesus, can be put off by somebody who comes on too strong. And here it is, Jesus is trying to get away from the crowds, and this woman comes crying after him, have mercy on me, O Son of David. My daughter is possessed by a demon. And maybe this is why Jesus retreats into his silence. His disciples aren't very silent about it, though. They say, come on, Jesus, send her away. She's bugging you when you're trying to get some rest. She's shouting after us, they say. Persistence is an admirable trait in somebody, but can't she take a hint? Jesus is tired. This is not the time to bother him. Maybe it was her timing. Maybe it was her attitude. Or perhaps a part of it was due to her religion. Jesus was a very focused man because he knew that he had limited time to serve and really some limited resources to work with. So he set some very clear boundaries on his ministry. He says, I was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel only. And this woman is not of the house of Israel. She is a Canaanite. So Jesus is saying, I'm here to serve a select group. Not kind of the way we look at it, is it? So this whole passage is a little different than the way we look at our Jesus and our Lord. It may seem cruel, but sometimes choices have to be made. Maybe he does have to limit who he can serve and when. Jesus made a conscious effort, and he says so throughout the scriptures, to serve the Jews. And that's when he explains that I came only to serve those from the house of Israel. But explaining his mission was not enough to this woman. She just kept hammering away, and she said, Lord, help me. And then Jesus said something that is not easy to swallow, even to this day. I told Chris to listen to the sermon and he'd find the answer to his question. It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs, Jesus said. Did he really say that? Was he calling the Canaanite people dogs? Come on, Jesus. You're trying to have me tell your people that they're not supposed to call people names. They're supposed to love all of humankind. And yet you're calling the Canaanites dogs. Well, that's tough to swallow. This is one of the most bothersome texts in all of the New Testament, for me anyway. Everybody is God's child, I believe, and I think Jesus thinks so too. So you can't read this passage and think that he is really meaning what that says. You have to remember that all of these stories were written about Jesus from 140 to 100 years after his death. And it's just quite possible that as the stories were passed down, hand to hand, mouth to mouth, that they just got a bit distorted in the translation. And that people said things, and that's why sometimes we have questions about the scriptures, because we realize that some of those words may not be the exact words that were uttered or have the exact meaning that we would put to them today. And regardless of the reasons why Jesus ignored this woman, there are some lessons that we can learn from her experiences that we can use whenever we need Christ's help. The first thing we can learn from this story is keep asking. In one of Billy Graham's books, he tells about his inability to master the Chinese language, even though his wife Ruth, who was born in China, and she's very comfortable with the Chinese language, but Dr. Graham is not. It's still a mystery to him after living there for quite some time. And he notes that the Chinese system contains pictograph and characters and all kinds of other ways to represent mental images. And he says that he's been told that the Chinese word for perseverance is a knife in the heart. And how true that is in some personal experiences. We persevere and sometimes we feel like we're ripped in half. How do you prepare and how do you persevere if you've got a knife in your heart? This woman had a knife in her heart, and just because the disciples tried to get rid of her, and even Jesus ignored her, she wasn't going to quit trying. And neither should we. That's one of the lessons. You don't quit trying. You don't quit believing. A highly influential Christian philosopher who has had a great influence on my theology is St. Augustine. And for many years, St. Augustine ran from the faith. He followed what at those times were heretical groups, particularly the Manichaeans, and they are generally considered to have twisted the scriptures. But it was ultimately Augustine's mother's love and her faith that brought him to the faith and the truth. Her name was Monica, and she was a fervent believer who prayed constantly, and she prayed that Augustine would see the error of his ways. She devoted her life to praying for his conversion. At one point, when he was devoted to the Manichaean philosophy, Monica begged a holy man to talk to St. Augustine, and the holy man refused because he knew Augustine and he was too intelligent. And he said he'd probably tear my stories to pieces and I wouldn't get anywhere other than just argue with him. And Monica began to cry. And the holy man sent her away. And he says, "Go, go, leave me alone. Live on as you are living." In other words, keep praying. Don't quit. It is not possible that the son of such tears should be lost. So the advice of the holy man to Augustine's mother was, don't give up. Keep praying. No matter what seems so dark and whether it will work for you or not, keep praying, don't quit. Well, she never quit. She took that live on as you were living, and she believed that. You're concerned maybe about something in your life, concerned about somebody you love or you know, don't give up. Keep on praying. Keep on asking. That's the lesson. Don't let tears squelch the flame of your faith in God. Keep on. It may seem like God is ignoring you, but I assure you that is not the case. God does not ignore us. Don't give up. Keep on asking and keep on trusting. We are all God's children. God does hear every single one of our prayers. He hears them all. And come what may, God will not let us down, even though we may not see at the time how or when He is going to react to our prayers. There was a young pastor who was sitting by the bedside of his wife. It was nearing time for her to birth, and they were to become parents. And they thought they were going to enjoy and bask in the glow of the announcement of it's a new baby. It didn't happen that way. They began shortly after the baby's birth a desperate search, a search for some specialist who could help their young child, and they were unsuccessful. Their little boy, Ronnie, was mentally impaired from birth. And the entrance of his father into the school of suffering taught him many things. Recalling that first grief summer, Ronald Meredith, the father, wrote, "Grief teaches lessons that joy can never know. We discovered that there is a comradeship in pain." Unlike the Canaanite woman, Ronald did not see his son healed, but he has not quit trusting. He now looks forward to that day when, according to God's great plan, everything for us will be perfected. He believes that one day he will see his son and he will say, "Hi, Ronnie." And his son will say, "Hi, Dad." They'll need a lot of time to talk because Ronnie in this life has never been able to speak a word. The Canaanite woman saw Jesus heal her daughter immediately. It may be that Ronald Meredith will have to wait until that day when he sees his son in that final place of peace for all of us. And then he will be fully healed. But he has not quit trusting, and neither should we. Keep on asking. Keep on trusting. Let's learn from this woman whose timing may have been bad, whose attitude perhaps needed to be adjusted, who for that time wasn't even of the right religion, but she sought Jesus out and would not be denied. She kept asking and trusting until Jesus exceeded her wishes. "O woman," Jesus said, "your faith is great. Be it done as you wish. Let us develop a trusting faith. No matter what happens, don't give up. Keep on asking and keep on trusting. God will not let you down. Amen.